Hi, my name is Bob Hill, and I'm the president of the Church of Scientology, Mission of Riverdale, at 308 Broadview Avenue in Toronto. Today, I thought I'd give you guys some tools that you could use to better the conditions in your life. The tool we're going to talk about today is called confronting. Now, one can safely assume that there's always something about a situation the person can confront, by which we mean, when we say confront, to easily face without flinching. This is a principle which forms the basis of a solution for many who are overwhelmed by their environments. In other words, if you find yourself being overwhelmed by your environment, find something about that you could easily face up to, however minor it is or whatever it is. For example, a social worker is visiting Mrs. Leary in her tenement, in her apartment. Mrs. Leary has an awful lot of problems, and she is telling them to the social worker. Her husband gets drunk all the time and never brings home any pay, and the furniture's broken and the children have no clothes, and it's impossible to keep the place clean and so forth. The social worker can really get somewhere if he can find something that can be confronted by the person he's trying to help and get him to actually do it. Although this sounds very simple and unimposing, it has fantastic workability. People working in the field of social work usually fail to simply adjudicate the problems involved in the situation and then do something about those problems that can have something done about them and that somebody can confront and can do something about them. So you want them to face it and take that little thing, and that's the beginning of doing something about it. So as a net result, a social worker doesn't succeed because he never gives anybody anything they can do. So in other words, a person may have a big flapping situation, like they want to leave their husband or wife, or they don't have any money, or they can't get up and go to work. Well, if you just, instead of trying to get them to look at that big thing, give them something small to look at, like, well, is it possible that you could look at your alarm clock? And the person says, well, maybe I could do that. And you get them to look at their alarm clock. And then could you set the alarm clock? And so on. And get them to see and confront the small things and build up to that big thing. But get them to look at something they can do. The well-meaning social worker says, what you want to do, Mrs. O'Leary, is clean the whole place up, scrub it down from top to bottom. After all, we've given you soap. And get your children cleaned up and put on those nice new dresses we sent you. Now I'll have a talk with your husband concerning his drinking. At this point, even Mrs. O'Leary wouldn't have cleaned up the whole place and put the children in clean clothes. She and the social worker part company violently. She can't face all that. You need to take one little thing she could do. The social worker has just told Mrs. O'Leary something she knows by experience cannot be done. Nobody can talk to her husband about his drinking. She doesn't think that even a full-scale attack by the United States Army could do anything about Mr. O'Leary's drinking. Nothing the social worker does or says from this point on is going to have any effect on Mrs. O'Leary. Suppose, however, that the social worker listened carefully to Mrs. O'Leary and then applied the principle of giving her something she could actually confront handling. He might have noticed that during their conversation, Mrs. O'Leary had emptied an ashtray for his cigarette. So he says to her, I'll tell you what I would do. I would start in on this thing a little bit at a time, and then I would get the place cleaned up. Now, why don't you keep the ashtrays empty, for example? She might even get angry with him, but when the social worker leaves, Mrs. O'Leary would go around and she would clean the ashtrays. Finding something that the person can confront handling is essential to getting his or her agreement to handle it. The first level of help is there is something that can be done about it. And the second level contains the element that you can do something. Giving a person something he or she can confront and actually get done starts to give him the idea that the situation can be handled. You got it? So that's basically what we're talking about. And finally, when you've done all that, you get them to look at their problem, and then you can take this basic principle here. Now, write down on a page what you could do about that problem, and have them give you these simple steps. And then at that, say, start with one part of the problem and go and do that. Now, the use of the principle can be of enormous assistance to people in social work and leading groups, in teaching and lecturing, and many other areas. Don't tell people about their problems that they know they cannot do anything about it and expect them to be enthusiastic about accomplishing anything. Neither the problem being pointed out nor the suggested solution must exceed the ability to confront on the person's part to whom it is being addressed. So you can't tell a person what their problem is because they can't confront it. And if they can't confront it, they won't do anything about it. The easiest thing to relay is an idea. Hey, well, why don't you try this? Person has money problems, you say, hey, why don't we try this? That idea that you're giving them may not violate what they can't confront. So they look at it and they say, okay, I can do that. So the sequence is, what is the situation? What part of the situation is potentially comfortable? And what part of that situation will somebody do something about? Okay? So there you go. And that's it for today's sermon. Take that simple tool. You find you have a problem in life, just do those simple steps. What is the situation? What part of the situation is potentially comfortable? And what part of that situation can I do something about? So there you go. Go on ahead and use that tool. For more information on that, you can take a look at a book called The New Slant on Life in Scientology, and that will give you some tools on raising your confront. You have a great day. Thank you.